You are on Crocodile's True Stories channel. Enjoy listening. It started with something as routine as ordering groceries. It was a Tuesday night. Julia was out at her weekly yoga class, something she'd picked up 6 months ago when she said she needed more time to center herself. I never thought twice about it. I encouraged it, actually. Told her I'd handle dinner, watch some TV, and decided to take care of our grocery list on the family tablet. That was the plan. Just a quiet night in. But plans have a funny way of crumbling when the truth decides to show up. I picked up the tablet, opened the browser, and was about to click on our usual grocery site when a notification slid across the top of the screen. It was from Messenger. My wife had apparently forgotten to log out. The message read, "You were amazing today. Same time tomorrow. Red heart, Troy." It didn't register at first. I stared at the words like they were written in another language. I remember blinking a few times, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Troy. I didn't know any Troy. We didn't have a Troy in our lives. I stood there frozen, heart in my throat, rereading that message over and over again. My first thought was, this has to be a joke. Some spam message, a wrong number, maybe even a quote from one of those weird meme accounts she follows. Right? But no. When I tapped the message, it opened an entire thread. No emojis or usernames to hide behind. Just direct, and asterisk mate. Unmistakably real conversations. I scrolled back, slowly, like peeling away a bandage from a wound I wasn't ready to see. Lunch was perfect. You smell like cinnamon and sunshine. I still think about that kiss by the elevator. You're addictive, Jay. Don't worry. He won't find out. You're careful. I trust you. It wasn't just one slip-up. This wasn't a harmless chat. This was ongoing. Routine. Familiar. I felt my chest tighten. I suddenly became aware of every sound in the house. The hum of the fridge, the soft tick of the wall clock, even the faint rattle of a window I hadn't sealed properly. Everything around me was still, but inside my head, it was chaos. I should have taken a screenshot, saved it, sent it to myself. But I didn't. I just sat there, frozen, until the screen dimmed. When I finally stood up, my knees were trembling. Julia came home not long after. She walked through the front door like nothing had happened. Yoga mat slung over her shoulder, hair tied up, glowing like she always did after a workout. She even smiled at me, kissed me on the cheek like everything was fine. And for a brief second, I wondered if I was losing my mind. "Hey," she said casually, heading to the kitchen. "Did you already eat?" I couldn't answer her right away. My voice was stuck somewhere behind the lump in my throat. She noticed, turned around slowly. "Everything okay?" I held up the tablet. "You left your messenger logged in." A flicker crossed her face. Barely there, but I saw it. She tilted her head, confused. "What do you mean?" A message popped up. From someone named Troy. There was a beat, a pause just long enough to confirm what I already feared. "Oh," she said, waving it off like I was overreacting. That's nothing. Troy's just a friend from the yoga group. We joke around a lot. He always sends dumb quotes from romantic movies. It's like an inside joke." I stared at her, trying to process the casual tone in her voice, trying to match it with the messages I'd just read. "A heart emoji?" I asked, not even trying to keep the disbelief out of my voice. She shrugged. "It's how he signs everything. He's like that with everyone." "You were amazing today. Same time tomorrow?" I repeated, my voice hollow. That doesn't sound like a movie quote. She met my eyes for a second, then looked away, picked at a fingernail. "Look, Brandon, I think you're reading way too much into this. You know I'm not like that." But the problem was, I didn't know anymore. I sat down on the edge of the couch, staring at her. She kept moving around the kitchen, opening the fridge, pouring a glass of water. Like this was just a normal evening, and not the night I'd caught my wife having some kind of secret relationship with a man I'd never heard of. "You didn't even ask what the message said," I said quietly. She turned around, eyes slightly narrowed. "Because I don't need to. I know it's nothing." "You're lying." The words came out before I could stop them. And once they were out, the silence between us deepened. She didn't deny it, not immediately. She just stood there, glass in hand, watching me like I was the one out of line. Her next words were careful, measured, too measured. "Are you okay, Brandon? You've been really stressed lately. Work's been draining you, I get that. But accusing me of cheating based on some dumb message? That's not fair." Gaslighting. I didn't recognize it in the moment, but that's exactly what it was. She flipped the narrative like it was a light switch. Suddenly, I was the one making things up, seeing problems that weren't there. She even came over and placed a hand on my shoulder, like she was comforting a child who just had a nightmare. "I love you," she said softly. "Don't spiral over something silly." And then she walked upstairs, humming under her breath like she hadn't just set fire to the foundation of our marriage. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the way she had brushed it all off. The ease with which she lied, the lack of fear in her voice, the calm. And that's what haunted me the most. Not the message, not even the thought of her with someone else, but the realization that she'd grown so comfortable being dishonest. So ** led at rewriting reality that she didn't even flinch. I wasn't ready to accept the truth that night. But something in me broke, all the same. Something I'd never get back. In the days after that message, everything started to look different. I wish I could say I confronted her again right away, that I demanded answers or walked out the door. But I didn't. I did what so many people do when they don't want to lose everything. They rationalize. They convince themselves they imagined it, or that there must be some other explanation. Anything is better than accepting that the person you love might not love you back the same way anymore. So I stayed. I watched. And quietly, I started to see all the pieces that never quite made sense. Pieces I had ignored because I trusted her. Because I wanted to believe in us. It started with the phone. Julia had always been a little private with her devices, but after that message, her habits shifted. Subtly at first. She'd keep it in her lap during dinner instead of leaving it on the table. It was always face down. If I walked into the room, she'd flip it or lock the screen with one swipe like it was second nature. She said it was a work thing, confidential clients, NDAs. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. But even then, I felt the pit forming in my stomach. Then there were the late nights. Julia had never been the type to burn the midnight oil, not even when she worked in corporate finance. But ever since she joined this new client-based fitness app startup, which, by the way, I'd never seen any materials or branding for, she started staying late more often. First once a week, then twice. Some weeks it was 3. She'd come home around 10:30 p.m., still in her workout gear, hair slightly damp, and say things like, "Troy's team is really intense about deadlines," or "We're onboarding new users in Australia, so the time zones are tricky." At the time, I told myself that made sense. Looking back now, it makes me feel like an idiot. She started dressing differently, too. When we first met, Julia had this effortless, down-to-earth look. Jeans, oversized flannels, hair in a ponytail, that kind of thing. She was beautiful, but she never tried to be flashy. That changed somewhere around month 3 of her yoga group. Suddenly, she was buying new outfits constantly. Sleek tops, yoga pants that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe, sports bras she'd pair with cropped jackets like she was auditioning for a fitness commercial. And makeup, more than usual. Lip gloss, contouring, that shimmery stuff she only used to wear on date nights. I'd compliment her, because that's what you're supposed to do when your wife makes an effort. But she didn't seem to care if I noticed. Sometimes she'd nod absently. Other times she'd brush it off, say she wasn't dressing for anyone, just feeling herself. She didn't dress like that around me. Around me, it was sweatpants, hoodies, hair in a messy bun, barefaced, which is fine, comfort matters. But there was a contrast that started to sting. Like she only wanted to look her best for the world, not for me. Like I wasn't part of the version of herself she still wanted to impress. Then came the physical distance. Her hugs became shorter. Her kisses felt distracted. If I reached for her in bed, she'd shift away gently, murmuring about needing sleep or being sore from class. She stopped holding my hand in public. Even when we sat on the couch, there was always a cushion between us. I told myself it was just a phase. Stress, exhaustion, hormones, anything but what it really was, detachment. There were showers, too, longer than usual. I'd hear the water running for 20, 30 minutes, sometimes more. When I asked about it, she said it helped her decompress. But I'd catch the faint scent of men's cologne sometimes, one I didn't wear. It was subtle, almost floral, but sharp. I noticed it once on her scarf, another time on the inside collar of her jacket. She always had an explanation. "Oh, someone hugged me goodbye at work." "Oh, I sat next to this guy on the train, and it must have rubbed off." I nodded. Because what else do you do when your gut is screaming and your brain is begging for mercy? The lies weren't bold. They were small, paper-thin things, designed not to hold up under scrutiny, but to fly just low enough to avoid triggering alarms. And I let them. I let them all go. And yet, somehow, the worst part wasn't the lies, it was the absence. Julia started disappearing, not just physically, but emotionally. Whole weekends would go by where I'd barely speak to her. She'd be out running errands for hours. "I'm going to see Melissa," she'd say. Or, "Sarah needs help with wedding planning." Except Melissa and Sarah both live in Evanston, and I saw receipts from gas stations out near Naperville. One weekend, she said she was helping her friend pack up after a breakup. When I called her an hour in, it went to voicemail. Texted, no answer. She replied 4 hours later with a vague, "Sorry, my phone died." My stomach flipped when I saw she had tagged a picture on Instagram that same afternoon. Not on her profile, but a friend's story. She was at a downtown lounge, smiling, holding a cocktail. No suitcase. No broken-hearted friend in sight. When I asked her about it, she got defensive. "What? I can't grab a drink after helping a friend move furniture all day." She turned it on me. Accused me of being insecure. Controlling. Said I was looking for reasons to be upset. And I believed her. Or maybe I just didn't want to deal with the consequences of not believing her. Because if I admitted to myself what was really going on, that she was slipping away from me, then I'd have to admit I didn't know how to get her back. Or worse, that she didn't want to be gotten back. Still, I started to keep quiet track of things. She had a second water bottle in her car. One she didn't bring into the house. It smelled faintly of spearmint and lemon, which wasn't strange, except Julia hated mint. Always had. Said it gave her headaches. She kept her gym bag in the trunk. I checked it once while she was inside picking up a smoothie. Inside were 2 sets of workout clothes. A pair of socks that weren't hers, men's size, still damp. A bottle of cologne tucked into the side pocket. I didn't say anything. Not yet. Because the moment I said something, it would become real. And once it was real, there'd be no going back. Some truths don't need to be spoken aloud to be known. Still, I wanted to be wrong. I clung to that hope like someone hanging off a cliff edge, knuckles white, arms shaking, praying the ledge would hold. But deep down, I'd already let go. I just hadn't hit the ground yet. The fall happened on a Wednesday. I'd taken Julia's car in for an oil change. Her schedule was packed that week. 2 evening classes, a team dinner, and some friend's birthday on Saturday. I offered to help with the car to make her day easier, which she appreciated with a distracted kiss and a "you're the best." The mechanic was running behind, so I waited inside her car, scrolling through my phone. Out of habit, I opened the glove box to check for the registration. That's when I saw it. A folded-up paper tucked behind a spare pair of sunglasses. I didn't think much of it, at first. But when I pulled it out, the word reservation jumped out in bold lettering. It was a printed hotel receipt. Boutique-style place. Downtown Chicago. Not one of those generic chain hotels, but the kind you book when you want the night to feel special. The name on the booking? Julia Carter. The second guest? Troy Garner. It felt like my body stopped working all at once. I blinked, heart racing, hands frozen on the paper. The reservation had been for the previous Friday. Check-in at 6 p.m. Check out the next morning. The same night, she'd told me she was at a girls' dinner in Lincoln Park. I remembered that night vividly. She came home after midnight, claiming the dinner turned into drinks, then dancing. She smelled like hotel soap, too fragrant, too sterile. I asked if everything was okay, and she said, "Of course, just tired." Then she kissed me and disappeared into the bathroom. I didn't question her. Now I knew why. When I got home that afternoon, I didn't say anything. I hid the receipt in a drawer, sat on the couch, and stared at the ceiling for what felt like an hour. My ears rang. My pulse pounded in my temples. And the silence of the house mocked me. It wasn't suspicion anymore. It wasn't a feeling or a theory. It was proof. I was the man being lied to in plain sight. That night, while she was in the shower, I opened her Instagram. Nothing out of the ordinary on her page. But when I checked her stories archive, something I'm pretty sure she forgot was even public, I found it. A picture posted around 9:30 p.m. that Friday. It was her, dressed to the nines in a dark green dress I'd never seen before, sitting at a candlelit restaurant table. One arm rested on the table, cocktail in hand, smiling off camera like someone had just whispered something funny. But it wasn't the smile that got me. It was the reflection behind her. In the polished glass of the window behind her seat, you could see the faint outline of a man. Tall, dark jacket, short cropped hair. The same profile I'd seen in a few of her yoga group photos, the ones she never tagged. Troy, you know how people talk about getting punched in the gut by bad news? That's not what it felt like. It was slower, duller, like something seeping into my bones, chilling me from the inside out. It wasn't rage. Not yet. It was heartbreak disguised as numbness. I didn't confront her that night either. She came to bed late, curled up on her side facing the wall, and fell asleep while I lay awake staring at the ceiling fan spinning above us. I kept thinking, how long has this been going on? How much of our life has been a lie? The next day, I called in sick to work. I needed time to think, time to breathe. That afternoon, I did something I'm not proud of. I checked the location history on her phone. She'd once shared it with me during a trip for safety reasons. I never thought I'd use it like this. The pattern was clear. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, she was at yoga, yet her location placed her nowhere near the studio she claimed to go to. Instead, she pinged in a quiet residential neighborhood, then later downtown, near that same hotel. Other days, she'd check into coffee shops near an unfamiliar office address. Once, she spent 3 hours at a park 20 miles from home, midday, when she'd told me she was working remotely. All those client meetings and strategy walks. All lies. I started noticing more. The way she'd come home from workouts, freshly showered, hair damp, but smelling like someone else's cologne. The new underwear she bought, but never wore around me. The playlists she made for training runs that were filled with love songs and soft pop duets. Even the food changed. She started cooking less, saying she was tired. And when she did cook, it was different. Spicier dishes. New flavors. Stuff I didn't like. When I asked about it, she laughed and said, "Oh, I guess my taste buds are changing." They weren't. She was cooking for someone else. And still, I said nothing. Why? Because saying it out loud would have made it permanent. Would have brought it into the light. And I wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. But everything shifted when I saw them in person. It was accidental. I was driving back from a friend's house on a Sunday afternoon, taking a route I didn't normally use when I spotted Julia's car parked near a small local cafe. I slowed down, thinking maybe I'd stop in and surprise her. We used to go to that place all the time. Then I saw her through the window. She was sitting outside, across from a man with short dark hair and a blue Henley. She was laughing. Not the polite laugh she gave me when I told corny jokes, but the real one. The one she used to use with me. He reached across the table, touched her hand, and she didn't pull away. She leaned into it. That's when something inside me broke. Not loudly. Not all at once. It was like watching the last candle go out in a room you didn't realize had gone cold. I drove away without stopping. I didn't cry. Not right then. My eyes stung, but the tears didn't come until later, when I was in the shower, water running down my face like it could wash away what I'd seen. I pressed my head against the tile and finally whispered the truth to myself. She's in love with someone else. Not just lust. Not a fling. She had crossed that line, the one you can't come back from. And she did it without telling me. Without ending things first. Without giving us the respect of a goodbye. When I came downstairs that night, she was sitting on the couch scrolling through her phone. She looked up and smiled faintly. "Hey, babe, you want to watch something?" And I stared at her for a long time before answering. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I realized she had become a stranger in our home. And maybe, just maybe, she had been one for a long time. The night I finally packed my things, Julia didn't say a word. She walked in as I was zipping up the last of my duffel bags. Her gym bag was still slung over one shoulder, car keys dangling from her fingers. She paused in the doorway, eyes scanning the room, taking in the half-empty dresser, the folded clothes on the edge of the bed, and me, kneeling on the floor, shoving the last of my socks into a bag like I was trying to erase myself as quickly as possible. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice quiet. Not shocked, not emotional, just confused, like she'd walked into the wrong scene. "I'm leaving," I said. "For how long?" I looked up at her and said, "I don't know." She didn't argue. She didn't panic or cry or rush to stop me. She just stood there, silent. And honestly, that hurt more than anything. Because if the roles were reversed, if I walked in and saw her packing to leave, I would have dropped everything. Asked why, begged her to stay. I would have fought. She didn't. She just stepped out of the room and said over her shoulder, "Well, I guess we both need space." That was it. No questions. No denials. No confessions. Just absence. A week passed. I moved into a friend's guest room, started sleeping with headphones in just to block out my own thoughts. Julia never called, never texted. She didn't check in, didn't ask where I was, didn't try to explain. And the longer the silence stretched, the louder it became. The quieter she was, the more I heard what she wasn't saying. On the 8th day, I got a knock at the door. I expected it to be Matt, my roommate, or maybe someone delivering something I forgot I ordered. Instead, it was Laura, one of Julia's co-workers. We'd crossed paths a few times at work events, parties, dinners. She always struck me as kind, quiet, maybe a little too observant. I opened the door and stared at her, stunned. "Hey, Brandon," she said, voice nervous. "Can I come in?" She looked like she hadn't slept much, messy bun, hoodie, no makeup. She held a coffee cup in one hand and her phone in the other, fingers twitching slightly, like she'd been rehearsing this moment on the drive over. I stepped aside, still too shocked to speak. She walked in, looked around the small apartment, and sat down carefully on the edge of the couch. "I'm sorry for just showing up," she said, "but I needed to say something." I sat across from her, waited. She took a deep breath. "I know about Troy. I didn't move. I know about the hotel, the messages. I know what Julia's been doing," she continued. "And I know you didn't deserve any of it." Still, I stayed quiet. I'd learned to let silence do the heavy lifting. Laura sighed, setting the coffee on the table. "I didn't mean to get involved. I swear." I kept telling myself it wasn't my business, that maybe it would blow over. But then I saw you two at a work event last month, and you were smiling at her like she was your whole world. And it just broke me. I finally spoke. "How long?" She looked down. "At least 6 months. That's when she started sneaking off during lunch breaks. At first, we thought she was interviewing somewhere else. But then she started coming back late, wearing different perfume, bringing back food for one. One of the girls joked about her having a midday boyfriend, and Julia just laughed. Didn't deny it." I clenched my jaw. "She told you." "Not me exactly, but enough people in the office pieced it together. Troy works in her building. Same floor, different startup. They met in the lobby one day and started talking. It escalated quickly. I didn't want to hear more, but she kept going. She called you predictable once," Laura said, softly. "Said you were too safe." That being with Troy made her feel alive again. I nodded slowly. I'd heard enough. Laura leaned forward, her voice shaky. "Brandon, I'm not here to hurt you more. I couldn't sit with it anymore. Watching her lie to your face, knowing you were trying your best, it didn't sit right." I looked her in the eye. She meant it. This wasn't pity. It was honesty. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something other than anger. I felt seen. "You didn't have to do this," I said. "I know," she replied. "But someone needed to." We sat there for a few moments in silence. Then Laura added, almost as an afterthought, "I think she expected you to come crawling back. She told someone in the break room that you'd come around eventually. Like she still held the power." That hit hard, because she probably did expect that. The version of me who forgave her for small lies, ignored the late nights, dismissed the warning signs, that version might have returned. Might have come home with flowers and apologies for being suspicious. But that version of me was gone. "I'm filing for divorce," I said quietly. Laura nodded. "Good." I walked her out, thanked her again. She didn't linger. She wasn't there to play hero. Just someone with a conscience who couldn't watch the lie play out anymore. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table for hours. Not crying, not fuming, just thinking. It wasn't the betrayal that broke me. It was the realization that Julia didn't even consider what she was destroying. That she thought I was so steady, so routine, that I'd never leave. That I was just background noise in the life she really wanted. And then there was Laura, a quiet presence who'd watched the collapse from the sidelines. Who saw me when I didn't even realize I was invisible. That night, I drafted the email to my lawyer. I emptied our shared account and moved my half into a private one. I changed my emergency contact, my health insurance, my passwords. Then I blocked Julia's number. The next morning, she messaged me from a different number. "We need to talk. I'm really worried about you. Please don't do anything rash." As if I was the one acting irrationally. I didn't reply. 3 hours later, another message. "I can't believe you're being so cold. I made one mistake and you're burning everything down." I still didn't reply. By sunset, she sent this. "You've been emotionally distant for years. Don't act like this is all on me." That one, I screeched *T for the lawyer. Then I deleted it and put my phone on silent. The storm had passed. All that was left was stillness. And for the first time in months, I didn't feel the weight of wondering. I felt something closer to peace. Once the decision was made, everything moved faster than I expected. There was no dramatic confrontation, no shouting match, no ugly threats hurled across the room. Just a quiet, deliberate unraveling of a life that had already frayed far too much. I'd spent so long doubting myself, twisting every instinct into knots to protect her image in my mind, that when I finally cut the rope, I didn't feel broken. I felt clear. The first thing I did was secure my footing. I opened a private checking account. I pulled half the money from our joint savings, my half, and deposited it there. I canceled the secondary card she had on my name, called the insurance provider, and updated my beneficiary. Changed the passwords to everything: banking, cloud storage, even the Netflix account. It wasn't about revenge. It was about closing doors she no longer had the right to walk through. Then I reached out to a divorce attorney. She came highly recommended by a friend who'd gone through something similar: cheating, gaslighting, emotional manipulation. The friend said she was a velvet knife, kind when she needed to be, sharp when it mattered. That was exactly what I needed. We met over coffee in a quiet corner of a cafe near my temporary place. I handed her everything: *TS of messages, the hotel receipt, the photo with the reflection, and the message Julia sent trying to shift the blame. She flipped through it all without much emotion. She'd clearly seen worse. "I'm so sorry you're going through this," she said softly after skimming the emails. "But you're doing the right thing." The words hit harder than I expected. Maybe because they were the first affirmation I'd heard in weeks. We filed the papers 2 days later. I didn't tell Julia in advance. There was no warning *T, no final conversation. I had already said everything I needed to by leaving. I didn't need to hand her another opportunity to twist the narrative, to paint herself as the victim of my coldness or overreaction. I was done giving her space to rationalize her betrayal. I was done trying to convince her, or anyone, that I wasn't crazy. I let the documents speak for me. The process server delivered them to our home on a Friday morning. Julia had the day off. She opened the door expecting a delivery, and instead got handed a manila envelope with her name on it in bold type and the words "Petition for Dissolution of Marriage" right beneath. She called me 3 times that day. I didn't answer. Then the text came: "Are you serious right now? You just gave up? You couldn't even talk to me?" Wow. After everything we've been through. As if I was the one who'd thrown it away. I stared at the screen for a while, thumb hovering over the reply button, but I knew there was nothing to say that wouldn't invite more chaos. There was no version of this where I responded, and it ended cleanly. So I didn't. I deleted the thread, blocked her number again, and went for a walk. It was a gray afternoon, the kind where the clouds look like they're sitting just above the rooftops. The air smelled like rain. I walked for miles. No music, no destination. Just my thoughts, finally uncluttered by fear and denial. With every step, I felt lighter. I hadn't realized how much weight I'd been carrying. How much of myself I'd buried trying to keep something broken from falling apart completely. The next week, I started moving into a small studio apartment. Nothing fancy, just a clean space in a quiet part of town, with wood floors and a view of the alley behind a bookstore. It smelled like fresh paint and possibility. I brought the bare essentials with me: clothes, laptop, 2 mugs, a kettle, a foldable couch I'd picked up used. That was it. No shared furniture. No wedding photos. No memories boxed up and carried into this new space. I didn't want reminders. I wanted a clean slate. A few days later, Julia messaged me again. New number. I saw the apartment address on the filing. "I'm outside." I stood frozen for a second, phone in hand. My new place had no buzzer, just a plain wooden door that opened straight to the street. I walked over slowly and pulled aside the curtain. There she was, hair tied back, no makeup, hoodie, flowers in hand. For a moment, it was like time folded in on itself. I saw the woman I married. The one who used to curl up next to me on Sunday mornings and whisper that she couldn't imagine life without me. The one who used to send me goofy selfies during lunch and left notes in my coat pocket that said things like "cruise in on you forever." But it wasn't her. Not anymore. This version had lied. Had kissed someone else. Had dismissed me like I was an option, not a partner. And now, after all of it, She wanted to stand on my doorstep with daisies and a guilt-soaked expression like that made up for everything. I didn't open the door. I watched her lift her phone. A new text came in seconds later. "Please just talk to me." I didn't reply. She stood there for another 5 minutes. Then she set the flowers down on the steps, looked up at the window one last time, and walked away. The door stayed shut. It wasn't anger. It was peace. The kind that doesn't come with closure or apologies. The kind that only shows up when you stop chasing answers from people who never intended to be honest. After she left, I took the flowers inside. I didn't throw them away. I placed them in an empty glass bottle and set them on the counter. Not as a symbol of forgiveness, but as a marker, a line in the sand. This was where the past stopped showing up uninvited. That night, I sat in my empty apartment with the lights off, the window cracked open, and a cup of tea in my hands. There was no noise, no chaos, no pretending. And for the first time in forever, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something to go